y'all? My name is Ryan Coleman, aka Rocco Fit, and I am here with
Evangeline DeAndre Lees.
and we are Unapologetically Mindful. The gist of this podcast is to really get people to understand that in order to be able to thrive in this life, you have to show up in the world as your most authentic, unapologetic self. And one of the biggest things that we want to preach to the community, is optimization within your mind, body, and spirit. So us as a pair are collectively working in order to be able to change the stigma between how the masculine and feminine energy in society is viewed, and ultimately being able to bring on guests that be able to add productive insight to you all.
And that includes diving deep in with yourself so that you can build intimate relationships with the people around you and raise a vibration. So we're going to be talking about everything mindfulness.
What's going on, y'all? We are back at it with another episode. Today, we are diving into the 5 stages of long-term relationships, all right? We're going to go step by step, break it down, and, more or less kind of dive into how we navigate within those stages and kind of, discuss where we kind of are, how we operated within the different stages and all that good stuff. Now, the funny thing is, I never know what we're actually going to be talking about. Van is usually like the mastermind, I feel like I'm in a space where we ultimately want the podcast to be as authentic as possible, so I definitely wanted to add that insight that it's like, it's not always the best to just, you don't always got to stage things, just kind of go with the flow, just go with God. God always kind of places in your heart what to be able to deliver, and that's exactly what we want to do with you guys. So without further ado, what we getting into, Van?
Okay, like you said, the 5 stages of long-term relationships. And honestly, I can honestly say, in doing the research throughout this podcast for this topic, the 5 stages, I did not know that there was 5 stages to relationships. I mean, I knew it went from, there was a honeymoon stage, and then you have your stage where you're in a relationship, and then maybe you're married, but I didn't know the core meaning of them. And in realization, I realized that I have not even completed all 5 phases in any of the relationships that I've been to. And it's taught me some things along the way. And I just want to make this preface that what we see in the media is the honeymoon stage, is the romanticized stage of dating. And people think that that's realistic and that's going to last their whole time while they're dating, but that's not realistic at all. That's only one stage of the relationship. And then after that, people barely make it through the next ones. So throughout this, I just want to bring awareness to the fact that through a relationship, you got to continuously grow, evolve, and be able to coexist with another human being. And that takes actual work. And discussing all the things throughout the podcast and the series of relationships, it just makes us get into the space where we're having more of a conversation about actually our relationship, because we're growing through this with you guys. So I want to get into the first.
I actually got one question for you. So you kind of said that you realized that you've never made it completely through the 5 phases.
Yeah.
So where is it that you have made it to? Because I feel like most people within their relationships, like, I can thoroughly say, like, outside of like you really, like, the honeymoon stage has been like, I've like stage 1 has, like, I'm pretty sure, I've made it maybe to a little bit in phase 2, but that for the honeymoon phase would definitely be for me the most part.
Yeah, I'll say definitely I'm a phase 2er. When we get to phase 2, you'll find out what that is. But in phase 2, a lot of people don't make it out of phase 2. And it's basically when we start seeing our differences, and I just never made it past that stage, because the honeymoon stage is like so sweet. That's where you see the best parts of a human being. And that's exactly what the honeymoon stage is, or the romance stage. It's the initial attraction that can last up to 2 years. And this is where the body's chemical response takes over, and we get stuck in that overdose of oxytocin. basically. It's our bodies. Our bodies is leading us in that instance. And sometimes the body can be wrong. I mean, when people say that they have butterflies when they see someone, that's not a good sign.
Why?
You're supposed to feel grounded in somebody's presence. They shouldn't invoke this energies of butterflies and anxiety. Butterflies
So
and
you
anxiety
shouldn't,
kind of
having
same.
that nervousness is not
No,
good?
the nervousness is not good. That's your body. That's your regulation system. Why are you nervous? Why am I nervous to be around you? When I first got to you, like, I was grounded.
Yeah.
I walked into your space and I'm like, I feel like I'm home. I have no reason to be nervous. I have no reason to be anxious. You should feel grounded in the presence of someone that you're connecting with. Not nervous, not butterflies, grounded. So, and that's that. You also got that like deep like love hormone. You know, when you're in a honeymoon stage, y'all like basically having sex like rabbits. Like you're going at it. And that fades away, but that's in that honeymoon stage because it's your body's chemical responses to that person, to that new lustful energy. You don't really know who that person is, and people are showing up as like the best version of themselves, especially if you're not in an instance where you're working on yourself in the process and you don't really know how to show up as your authentic self. You're giving somebody the best parts of you because I'm basically feeding your ego. When you're giving me the best parts of you, I'm feeding your ego. I'm like, I love that you're giving me all of this. I love it. And it keeps you in that state of, giving that. And then when something goes wrong, it becomes a problem. But I want to ask you, because you did say the honeymoon stage is about like where you fall, then like what was the ups and the downs? Because the honeymoon stage have a lot of ups. So what was the ups and the downs within that honeymoon stage that made you like kind of like stay there in a lot of your last relationships?
I mean, off the top of my mind, like definitely I feel like sex is like a big part in that. And within that phase in itself, like the sex can just like throw you off because it's like, yeah, like you're getting all of those feel good hormones being released from that, But then as you start to go more into other phases, you start to realize like, wow, this person, really doesn't have much to offer to me outside of this, and I think that there's a lot of people who do kind of base their relationships off of the sex, and you take that out the equation and then it's like, what value is really even being added on either side outside of that? So, I mean, I definitely like feel like that the sex was an up, but then also it could be a down as well because it can block like your true vision and how you really feel from an emotional standpoint. Again, I would say it's kind of like another down would be you're kind of walking on eggshells. It's like, all right, I got to be an optimal performance. I got to be able to make sure that, I show up, I show out. I don't want to rub this person the wrong way because then if I upset them, what if they just want to stop talking to me? So like you're constantly at this state of just like trying to prove yourself and therefore, going above and beyond and doing things that you honestly typically wouldn't even do. And it's like you're setting that bar so high to a point that when it's no longer a standard, that in itself caused issues within the relationship and stuff like that. And then anytime that something is new, it feels good, so like it's obviously, that would be an up because it feels good at the time. But then once you like actually like marinate with it a little bit, that can be a low because it's like, wow, like, it's kind of like having, like a new car, getting a new car. It's like, once you first get it, you taking it to the car wash, you getting the rims clean, you keeping the interior nice. And then as it starts going on, you start, pouring a little less and less energy into it, so that kind of be my breakdown of it.
So in this stage, were you seeing the other persons, were you seeing their flaws where they were showing up their best?
Not necessarily. I feel like, not necessarily. Yeah, like I mean, you could see, like you start to see things like that would pop up as like triggers, irritation, and stuff like that. But in that time, to say that when I was in that moment that I see that as like a flaw within that person, not necessarily. Now from the outside looking in now, I could say that, but like when I was actually in that moment, no.
It was like you were jaded. Where you think you were jaded?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and yeah, 100%.
Okay. She was jaded.
Yeah.
Okay, so within our relationship, just because I have made it to that, I feel like I've made it to that stage too. When did you feel like with us, it wasn't just lust? It was actual, like you were ready to go into that next stage.
Yeah, so, well, because, you know, like, we spent a lot of pretty decent amount of time before we even, like, locked it in. So we were going through, you know, a lot, you know, and within that, it truly allowed me to be able to establish that, like, wow, you know, no matter how much we go through, no matter how many disagreements we have or whatever the case may be, like, this is somebody that I want to continue to work with, you know, and it was kind of throughout those times where, you know, the flaws were starting to show up, you know, with me having a more awareness of those and me just kind of being able to identify like these are flaws of this individual, but also being able to come from a place of unconditional love with nobody, with anybody else that I've been with. I didn't necessarily feel that feeling of like, you know, I'm willing to love this person unconditionally no matter who they are and what they do. It was more, it was very, it was conditional, you know, like it was just like, like, you know, certain things would throw me off. I would hold it back. I wouldn't express it. I would build up resentment over time. And, you know, that's where it really became an issue. But with you, it's always felt very unconditional. And I think to me, that was really what made me realize that it wasn't lust. And then also, like, I mean, a lot of times, there was a period of time, like, where you would literally, like, sleep with me in my bed and stuff like that, and, like, I'm very good at honoring boundaries. So, like, I wouldn't try to come on to you. I wouldn't try to have sex with you. I wouldn't try to do any of that because I needed to test myself. I need to show myself also that, you know, this person means something more to me than just sexual intercourse, you know, and like I would still feel that same amount of love whether we were having sex or we weren't having sex, you know. So that to me showed me everything I needed to know as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And just firstly, for me, it helped that you were also working on yourself.
Yep.
Because I spent a lot of time during that time working on myself, and for you to be working on yourself and me to be realizing the flaws that you had, I could at least say he's working on it. Like, I already know when you're going through change, everything's not going to be perfect. There's going to be times where you may get triggered. There's going to be times where, you know, we may react. There may be times where we're acting, you know, within something that was part of our childhood. But when I realized that you were working on and owning up to, you know, your whole entire life, that gave me the room to realize that it was more than just lust, and this is someone that I'm willing to dig into those shadows with.
Yeah.
And honor him and make sure that, okay, you have your triggers, you have your needs that need to be met along the way. How can I assist you within this life? And then with that, I realized that, you know, I was ready for that next phase. So that is phase number 2.
Well, just to add one thing, like, I feel like it is important for people to know that, you know, in that honeymoon phase, before you even go into the next phase, you have to take the time to properly identify if you even want to, you know, accept this person's flaws.
Yes.
Because, I
Absolutely.
think people think that they're like, oh, like, I'm in too deep, like, I just have to settle for this. And it's like, no, it's always a choice. Like, you have an option on whether or not that you want to put up with this. Regardless, like, whoever you're with, you're going to have to deal with something. But, like, ultimately, the choice of deciding what it is that you put up and where you kind of put that boundary is completely optional.
Yes, completely optional. And also know your worth, because you can be overstepping your worth in that. Know your worth and set those boundaries, definitely. And going to number 2. Number 2 is the power struggle phase. And the sounds of it, you'll understand why I didn't get through this phase. And this actually happens around year 3. I've never made it past 3 years in a relationship. After that 3 years, I was like, gotta go. But it happens around years 3 and 4. It could happen sooner, but it follows that honeymoon stage. And it's when it's the highest percentage of first marriage divorces happening and loss of relationships. And we begin to see each other's flaws and differences. And it's hard sometimes to come to terms with your partner's flaws, because you can always be looking at it in the light of, well, I wouldn't do that. Why would this person do that? And realizing that everybody's not you, and letting go of that control and giving the person the freedom to be themselves is how you can exit this power struggle phase. If I'm always looking at Ryan being like, he can be better in this department, he can be doing this for himself to create this life that he says he wants. If I'm constantly making him feel like what he can be doing could be better, it's one thing to encourage you and to, cheer you on, but it's another thing to have these expectations on you that you don't even have on yourself. And when you're looking through your partner with that lens, and just seeing there's those differences, it can put you in a space where you feel like your partner is, you're superior to your partner is inferior. And that's not a good, place to stand in a relationship, because that ends up in a lot of disagreements, because you don't feel like I'm right, I don't feel like you're right. We're no longer working as a pair to figure the problem out. We're seeing what's within our best interest. I'm seeing what's in my best interest, and you're seeing what's in yours, and distinguishing between right and wrong, and not the actual solution. And some people just don't make it past this phase, and it's also a phase in which you understand there's things about you that I have fully accepted, but I cannot live with. And some people try to hold on to that phase in the relationship. And that's where you have to really let go.
So I know that earlier I said that I was at phase 1 is probably the furthest. It's definitely this phase. However, it's crazy that you say it's usually between 3 to 4 years, because I was in a 7-year relationship. But how you spoke on being stuck at that position, that was me, because essentially we hit this point around, the year 3 or 4, and, I just held on. I knew there were certain things about that individual that just weren't going to change, that just didn't align with what I was looking for and seeking within a partner. But I still was holding on, and I was holding on, due to a lot of things that had to deal with ego. And then looking from the outside lens now with us, I'm man, I think we've honestly kind of surpassed this phase to a certain extent, because I had that realization even the other day, where I was able to catch myself so fast, because I essentially have reacted a certain type of way based off of a way that you respond. And I know this is how you respond. This is that is part of who you are. You're a person, you ask, if I ask you a question, you'll respond with a question, because you're trying to get deeper, information from it. And I know that about you, but I still allowed myself to get upset about that. And that has more to do with me than it ever does with you. But being able to even have the acceptance and awareness of things like that, and knowing that I'm accepting fully of that, I'm okay, perfectly fine with that, and more or less checking myself in that situation, that was something that I was never able to get through with anybody else that I've been with.
Yeah, and I agree. I think this is a stage that we're working through. We're consciously working through it. We identify where we have those power struggles, and then once we identify it, it might be a little rough identifying it, but right when we identify it, usually within the same day or the next, we work on moving past it. And I was a runner, so within the power struggle phase, I can honestly say, once I've seen something wrong, I would stay for a certain amount of time, but I would be mentally and emotionally checked out, and I would still be kind of holding on. But even though I noticed I'm not going to be able to be with this person, and then once I came to terms with that and distance was created, I made my exit. And I will say that I'm better at letting go. It's harder for me to hold on in the power struggle phase of relationships, because I was one to have I would say I always want to have greater boundaries than I do now to a certain extent, but it was because of what I went through. I was scared that I was going to go through that again. And that's something that within the power struggle phase, I also have to realize that, I have a partner who's working through things as well. And it's not my past relationship. Like, I don't have to be haunted by what happened in the past, because I'm so prone to just leaving, when things, get bad or something. So that's what this power struggle phase have really taught me. But also, when I say we're currently working on it, I say it because I also have those moments where I have to look at you and be like, this is him. You're a very passionate person. And and I have to sometimes, instead of feeling some type of way, I can't even describe the feeling. It's like when you act in passion, I more so feel it in my body. And if I feel it in my body, I tend to shut down. And I'm learning to accept the passion. I'm a very chill person. So it kind of evens me out because it gives you that fire. But I'm learning to accept that part of you and not be so reactive or triggered based upon that, and work with you in that, because that's a part of you that I really love and appreciate. So yeah, it's working through those small differences, but we've had conversations leading up to this where we're actually working on it, and it feels good to be actually working through it.
Yeah. And even for me, I think one of the challenging things that, for you, in terms of you, it was more or less like the communication aspect. Because, sometimes I can say something that you might not necessarily receive the best at the time, or I might not deliver it the best at the time, and you had a tendency of shutting down. But based off of my previous relationship, I knew that was something that would give me anxiety and make me anxious. So I made it a point to go into this relationship with excellent communication. Definitely anytime that I felt like energy was off, not allowing resentment to be held up, just all right, let's get to this, let's figure this out. Granted, sometimes people just need time, but if we're living together, if we're going to do life together, it's just that awkwardness and walking around the house and, sleeping on the couch. And I'm no, I'm going to sleep in my bed, whether we argue, whether we fight, whether we good, we going to go to bed together, we going to be cool. And, as a man, I've had to take it upon myself to really kind of lead in that sense, and even in times where, I know that I may be right, I have to humble myself and not be boastful in that moment, but rather come to you and be like, hey, we're good. I know that you might not have took what I said the best, but we're all good, kind of hug you, give you energy, allow you to feel it, because my passion is strong. So when I deliver things, sometimes they're so direct, and people really do feel that when I'm speaking. And there's many times when I'm speaking to people or I'm speaking to rooms, I've observed that people they have a tendency to rock, they got a tendency to move, and it's really due to the fact of they feel it, and that energy, emotion is essentially what's causing them to do that, because they not only do they hear me, but they feel me, they feel where that's coming from. So with me being mindful of that, I have to, know that just to be comforting to you in times like that. So that's been one of the most challenging things, but it's been so beautiful to just work through. And it's made me better as a person, even just with other people, because even though I don't have an intimate relationship with anybody else, I do have interpersonal relationships. So it's, a lot of the principles are the same.
Yep. And the more that we continue to embrace each other's differences and work through those, the more freedom we'll give each other, to be our complete self within our relationships. And that's what we all crave. It's the freedom. People think that they create freedom, they just want to be out here, but it's really freedom to express your truth.
Yeah.
Express who you truly are without being judged by especially someone as close to you as your partner. And the more that you allow me to be free, the more that I allow you to be free, like, we're limitless.
Yeah,
We're
because
literally limitless.
if it wasn't for you allowing me to walk around the house like rapping and stuff like that, you know, I wouldn't be building up myself to get to the point where I'm gonna be able to drop this album one
And I'm
day.
gonna produce it, so we all good. I'm gonna produce that. Stage number 3 is the stability stage, which I feel like we are getting to, and it's about to feel good. Okay. So this is when you acknowledge each other's differences without the want to change your partner. In this stage, you both have a clear boundaries and learn mutual respect. The thrill of being in a relationship starts all over again. So you actually go through your honeymoon relationship basically again. And I think we kind of covered it, but the steps that I would want to take is to just continue to allow you that freedom to be yourself, and then be aware of what triggers me. I was just having a conversation with Tyrus behind the camera before this, and we were just talking about how sometimes it be yourself. It's not that your partner sees you a certain way. It's not that you see me a certain way. When you respond sometimes, I see myself a certain way.
Yep.
And then I get triggered based upon how I'm seeing myself. And coming to that realization for me is crucial in my relationship, because he's a very great partner. Though sometimes he may say things and it might come off very harsh, like, he's a great partner. And it's not even really that harsh. I came to the fact that, like, I can be a little sensitive sometimes, but it be said with a lot of passion as well, and just be harsh. But the more that I can remember that that's not who I am, the more that I can give you the freedom to be yourselves while honoring my boundaries as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I, like, looking at this stage and based off of the other one, like, we're definitely working towards that, you know, because, like, there's still times where, like, I'm reacting and I'm responding, and I'm still having to catch myself, you know, and then sometimes, like, you might say something and, like, that thought of judgment still comes up in my head. Like, yesterday you forgot your phone in the car and we made it upstairs. Yes, she has a tendency, like, 100% each and every time we go somewhere, like, she's 9 times out of 10 gonna forget something. Now I know this about her. You know, I used to get upset. I'm like, dang, man. Like, you know, now I think I did good yesterday because I didn't say anything at all. I literally took it upon myself to actually go get the phone and just didn't even say nothing. So to me, that was a representation of growth, you know, and it's just really, like I said, just coming from that place of unconditional love and knowing and compassion, and just not a place of judgment, and more or less acceptance, because it's like I've accepted the fact that, like, you're who I want to be with. So it's like we're going to work through anything that we need to work through within that so that we can have that stability.
And that's crucial. You have to really, like, give your partner that freedom to be themselves so that you can move on to stage number 4, which is the commitment stage. And it has nothing to do with actual marriage. It's when you have a beautiful balance of love, belonging, fun, power, and freedom. You learn to love each other by having to like each other, and you choose each other consciously. Yes. So, and within this relationship, within the commitment relationship, that's when you can fall into struggles when it comes to your romantic life. If you're not actively getting in a space where you're still honoring that romanticism within your relationship, as in you're not catering to your partner's needs as you could on a romantic level, and they're not catering to your needs as they could on a romantic level, whether it's like emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. You have to be still in the stage where you're not just used to each other and you're not just friends, but you're actually still honoring each other's needs. So it can get kind of stagnant within that relationship. And I can say that I see throughout reading these relationships, I can see how this can be within each of our relationships, especially if y'all been in a relationship, you know, years, where you see, like, even though right now I am choosing him, like, I like you, I'm going to choose you. I also have to remember that I have to meet his needs. Like, and there's needs in mine that he needs me, but also we have our needs that we need to meet individually, of course. And then allowing each other to meet each other's needs. That's where you can dig into, like, really those love languages and everything, but continuing that within a relationship And I think we discussed that on a previous episode, the relationship check-in, of how we can continue to meet each other's needs within our relationship, because that's where that can get kind of stale.
Yeah, and to me, like when I think of this stage, I think of, those relationships where a couple might be married, they got some kids, they kind of got a flow in their career and stuff like that. And, they be so consumed with what the kids got going on. They be so consumed with work that they completely forget about each other. And I forget what that show was that we were watching on TV. It was like how to build a sex room on Netflix.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which don't ask. Don't ask.
Coming soon.
Yeah, but like what we identified within that show is like, they were like, it would always be these families with these kids, and they were literally neglecting each other, and they were building these sex rooms as a way to have a space of intimacy, of privacy, of being able to say like, this is where we can go and be together. So like ultimately that's what made me kind of think of this stage specifically.
Yeah, because my mom really just told me, because I was telling her about these stages, and she told me that she felt like her and my dad, they've been married 20 years, close to 20 years, and she was telling me how her and my dad, she thinks that they're now just getting to stage number 5 because they were stuck in stage number 4, and then now they're empty nesters. They were literally worried about their kids, even though they're still worried about their kids. They were worried about their kids, they work, taking care of the household, that they're now in a state where they are actively like within stage 5 and are able to, co-create together and build that romantic side of their relationship back up intentionally. So I understand how that can be, especially with kids, even owning a business. I'm like, I can't imagine owning a business, having a kid, having a relationship, like taking care of the household. It's a lot. So you have to be really, really, really intentional of how you spend your time together as a couple, because it can get a little stale.
And the best way, like in terms of romance, is just like throughout the relationship, just keep it going. Don't ever get away from romance, and just keep it at the top of your mind. And date nights need to be a regular thing. Giving yourself time to go and spend where it's just you and nobody else. It doesn't need to be that all the time, because obviously we need time for ourselves. But like just being intentional with keeping that romance going all throughout at every single stage is a way that once you get to that commitment stage, it'll kind of help you flow through it, which ultimately allow you to get to stage 5, which is the bliss and co-creation stage.
Yes, stage 5, bliss and co-creation. Basically understanding that it's not about control, it's not about power, it's not about infatuation. It's not also about it's about commitment, but you see it as you're committed to each other, you're a union, and you're able to co-create in life, because I'm allowing you to have your freedom, you're allowing me to have our freedom. So now as a unit we can continue to co-create in life. And that's when I can say families, businesses within, family can get built within that relationship. You end up co-creating together and, taking on life together. And like I said, see each other in all 5. So as our relationship grows, I am excited to see stage number 5 for us, especially with what we're already doing.
Yeah, and I feel like we took the expedited route. Like,
we were like,
yeah, because it was like 3 to 4. That was like phase 2, and I feel like it's only really been. I mean, technically, we're on our 3rd year, because the first year it was like the practice year. It was like the warm up phase. Then we had that actual first year. January 13th. That was the 1 year mark, and then. Now we're working into that 3rd year, but we're already they're working into stage number 3,
Yeah.
And so I think that is a testimony to how much we actually intentionally pour into our relationships. And, definitely to all the viewers, I would definitely take time to be intentional with the knowing of what stage you're in, and take time to assess and be realistic.
Yes.
Because some people are gonna listen to this and they could be like, oh yeah, we in stage 5, and it's like, No, you're probably not. Like somebody who is in stage 5 is like our parents. Like my parents been married for 30 plus years. Like they are definitely in stage 5. Like it takes time, it takes patience, it takes practice, and you know, like I said, the majority of people are in that honeymoon phase and can't even have the realism to understand that that's where they are, and the accept, more or less, not even the realism, but the acceptance of knowing that this is where I realistically am.
Exactly. And I'll agree with you on that. And also, like within it, understand that getting out of that power struggle phase, it takes work. Like relationships take work. It takes talking to each other, communicating, digging into things that you may not want to say, but that needs to be said so that you can move past that power struggle phase, because that's the stage that a lot of people just do not realistically make it through. So take time to have the tough conversations, assess whether the relationship is right for you or not, and then if it is, work on yourself so that you can benefit from your relationship as well.
Yep. And definitely when you guys are watching this video, you know, take some time, you know, share, screenshot, and, you know, genuinely let us know, like, what phase that you feel like you're on within our kind of breakdown here today. But that's all we got for you guys. We'll catch you next time.